Number my dad said you have work, while your bro enjoys. It's that simple, and if you don't like it, get out. I was dragging myself through the door, after working my second 8-hour shift that day, when I saw my younger brother Derek sprawled across the couch controller and hand snacks scattered around him. For years I accepted the unfair treatment in our house, thinking it would eventually change. But that night when I politely asked my parents about the double standard, my dad snapped. You have work while your brother enjoys. It is that simple, and if you do not like it, get out, he barked. My mom just nodded along. Something inside me broke and rebuilt itself in that moment. Before leaving, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Ohio, the signs were always there, but I chose to ignore them. My name is Nathaniel, and at 26 years old, I finally realized the depth of the favoritism that had shaped our family dynamics for decades. My dad, Frank, worked in construction management, putting in long hours to maintain our comfortable lifestyle, while my mom, Laura, worked part-time as a school administrator. My brother, Derek, is 4 years younger than me, and from the day he was born, it seemed like the sun rose and set on him. When I was 14, my parents told me I needed to get a summer job if I wanted spending money. It builds character, my dad said, clapping me on the shoulder. Meanwhile, Derek was encouraged to focus solely on baseball and basketball. He has real talent, they would say. He needs to concentrate on what could get him a scholarship. The pattern continued through high school. I worked weekends at a local hardware store while maintaining a 3.8 gigapascals. Derek barely passed his classes but was treated like a hero for every base hit. When I made honor roll, my parents would nod absently. When Derek scored a touchdown, they would throw a backyard barbecue. Car privileges made the contrast even more obvious. I saved for 2 years to buy a used Honda with 120,000 miles on it. 3 years later, when Derek turned 16, our parents surprised him with a 2-year-old Ford that cost triple what mine had. Your brother needs something reliable for all his team events, Mom explained when she saw my expression. College was where I truly felt the inequality. I worked nearly full-time while taking a full course load. My parents contributed about 1/4 of my tuition, which I was grateful for, but I still graduated with substantial loans. Derek, on the other hand, got a partial athletic scholarship, and our parents covered everything else. We do not want him distracted from sports by having to work, Dad told me when I questioned it. I majored in computer science and landed a decent entry-level IT job right after graduation. I also picked up weekend shifts at an electronics store to build my savings and chip away at my student loans more aggressively. Meanwhile, Derek had dropped out of college after 3 semesters when his athletic performance did not meet expectations. That was 8 months ago, and he had been living at home ever since with no job, and apparently no urgency to find one. The job market is tough right now, Mom would say, making excuses. He's just figuring things out, Dad would add. I tried not to let it bother me. I had my own apartment, my own life, and was building my career step by step. I thought I had escaped the family dynamic until circumstances forced me to move back home. My apartment building was sold to a developer planning to convert it to luxury condos. With 30 days' notice and a tight rental market, I reluctantly accepted my parents' offer to move back home temporarily. We agreed that I would pay $800 monthly for rent and utilities, which seemed fair. I figured it would be a short-term arrangement while I found a new place, maybe 3 months at most. I had no idea how quickly things would deteriorate. My daily schedule was punishing. I would leave by 7 in the morning for my IT job work until 5, then 3 evenings a week head straight to my retail job until 11. I would come home exhausted often to find the kitchen a mess from Derek and his friends making late-night snacks. Despite paying rent, I somehow ended up handling most of the household chores. Derek, meanwhile, typically slept until noon, played video games, worked out sometimes, and hung out with friends. He contributed nothing financially and did minimal chores, usually only after repeated nagging from our parents. One particular evening stands out in my memory. I had just received a promotion at my IT job and came home eager to share the news. We were all at the dinner table, one of the rare occasions when everyone was present, and I started to tell them about my new position and raise. Before I could finish, Dad interrupted me. Derek has some good news too. Tell them, son. Derek grinned. I applied for a job today, at GameStop. The table erupted in congratulations. Mom actually got teary-eyed. "I am so proud of you for taking this step," she gushed. They spent the next 20 minutes discussing the potential of his application, completely forgetting about my actual promotion. I sat there fork in hand, wondering if I had somehow become invisible. The next week, Mom approached me in the kitchen. "Honey, we need to adjust the utility payments. The bills have been higher than expected. I was already paying more than my share, but I simply asked, 'How much more? We think 200 more would be fair,' she said. 'The summer electric bills are always higher.'" I glanced through the doorway at Derek, who was playing video games in the living room. "Is Derek contributing anything?" Mom's expression tightened. "Your brother is not in a position to help financially right now. Has he even been looking for work since that one application?" "Do not start this again, Nathaniel. You are older. You have always been the responsible one." That was their constant refrain. "You are older. You are more responsible." As if being reliable was some kind of character flaw that justified unequal treatment. The situation with chores was just as lopsided. I found myself doing laundry, taking out trash, mowing the lawn, and grocery shopping, while Derek occasionally loaded the dishwasher, an act for which he received effusive praise. When Derek's car was in the shop for 3 weeks, I was expected to drive him around, despite our conflicting schedules. "Your brother needs help," Dad insisted. "That is what family does." I tried multiple times to have rational conversations about the imbalance. "I feel like there are two different sets of expectations in this house," I told them during one family dinner. "Different people have different capabilities," Dad responded. "Derek is going through a tough time," Mom added. "For 8 months?" I asked. Derek just shrugged, smirking slightly. The breaking point came after I had worked double shifts 6 days straight. I dragged myself home at midnight on Friday, desperate for sleep, only to find the house pulsing with music and filled with people. Derek was hosting a party. The living room was trashed, the kitchen counter covered in empty bottles, and the noise was deafening. I found Derek in the backyard with his friends. "What is going on? I need to sleep." "I have work again at 8 tomorrow," I said. Derek laughed. "Dude, it is Friday night. Relax." "Did Mom and Dad know about this?" "Yeah, they are staying at Uncle Jim's for the night. They said it was fine. They had known. They had given permission for this party, fully aware that I would be coming home exhausted after working 16 hours. I retreated to my room, put in earplugs, and barely slept. The next morning, I confronted my parents when they returned. The house was still a disaster, and Derek was sleeping off his party. "Why would you allow him to throw a party when you knew I had to work early?" I asked. "He needed to blow off some steam," Dad said dismissively, "while I work myself to exhaustion and cannot even get a decent night's sleep in the house I pay to live in." "Stop being so dramatic," Mom said. "You are always working. One night would not kill you. That is not the point. There is a complete double standard here. I pay rent, I buy groceries, I do chores. Derek does nothing and gets treated like a king." Dad's face darkened. "Your brother is finding his way. He has been finding his way for almost a year now. On your dime, while I work 2 jobs and still get asked for more money." That is when Dad said the words that would change everything. "You have work while your brother enjoys. It is that simple, and if you do not like it, get out." Mom stood beside him, nodding in agreement. The message was crystal clear. This was their house, their rules, their preference, and their preference was Derek. Looking at my parents' faces in that moment, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For years, I had been trying to earn equal love through hard work and responsibility, never realizing that the game had been rigged from the start. My father's harsh words hung in the air between us, and for the first time I truly heard them. "You have work while your brother enjoys. It is that simple. And if you do not like it, get out." He repeated, his voice lower but somehow more threatening. I took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. "Great. Then I will leave and you can pay your own bills. It is that simple." The kitchen went silent. Mom's mouth fell open slightly. Dad's expression shifted from anger to confusion, as if he could not quite process what I had said. "What did you say?" he finally managed. I said, "I am leaving. Today. You just told me to get out if I do not like the arrangement, and I do not like it. So I am going." Dad scoffed, not believing me. Do not be ridiculous. Where would you even go? That is not your concern anymore, I replied, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. But before I go, let us do some math. $800 in rent and utilities. Around $300 in groceries that I buy for the whole family. I fixed the dishwasher last month, $400. I have been paying for the lawn service, $200 monthly. Internet and streaming services, another $150. That is over $1,800 you will need to come up with each month after I leave. Mom's face paled. These numbers clearly had not registered with them before. I could see her doing mental calculations, probably realizing their household budget was about to collapse. Nathaniel, you are being hasty, she said, her tone suddenly conciliatory. Your father did not mean that you should actually leave. Yes, he did, I replied calmly, and you agreed with him. You both made it very clear where I stand in this family. I turned and walked upstairs to my room, pulling out my suitcase from under the bed. I started packing methodically, taking only what I needed for the immediate future. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, important documents. The rest could wait. Derek appeared in my doorway, hair disheveled from sleep, looking confused. What are you doing leaving? Because of the party, dude. I am sorry about that. I did not think it was a big deal. I paused my packing and looked at him. It was strange, but I did not even feel angry at Derek anymore. He had been raised to believe the world revolved around him. That was not entirely his fault. It is not about the party. It is about years of being treated like a second-class citizen in this family. It is about being expected to work and pay and contribute while you get everything handed to you. And it is about Mom and Dad making it perfectly clear that they are fine with that arrangement. Derek shifted uncomfortably. For a brief moment, I saw a flash of something like understanding in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared behind his usual careless facade. They did not mean it, he offered weakly. They were just annoyed. No, they meant it. And I meant what I said too. I continued packing while I heard hurried conversations downstairs. When I came down with my suitcase, Dad was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. This is childish, he said, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. You cannot just walk out because of one disagreement. This is not one disagreement, I replied. This is years of unfair treatment coming to a head. And you just confirmed what I have always suspected, that in this family I am valued for what I contribute, not for who I am. Mom appeared from the kitchen, eyes red. Please do not do this. We are family. Families stick together through everything. Family works both ways, I said quietly. It is not just me supporting all of you while getting nothing in return. Dad's anger returned. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us. By walking out when things get a little tough. What exactly have you done for me that compares to what you have done for Derek? I paid my own way through college. I bought my own car. I have been paying rent to live in my childhood home. Meanwhile, Derek contributes nothing and gets everything. Dad had no answer for that. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I walked to the door, feeling both terrible and liberated at the same time. The weight of years of unequal treatment was lifting, even as the pain of this moment pressed down on me. Where will you go? Mom asked, her voice breaking. I called Jake, I said, referring to my best friend from college. He said I can crash at his place until I find an apartment. This is ridiculous, Dad said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice now. The financial reality was starting to sink in. You will be back in a week when you realize how good you had it here. I looked him directly in the eyes. I will not be back. Not until things change. And with that, I walked out the door, put my suitcase in my car, and drove away from the only home I had ever known. In my rearview mirror, I could see my parents standing in the doorway looking stunned, as if they had never imagined I would actually leave. The truth was, until that morning, I had never imagined it either. Driving to Jake's apartment, I felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. I had no concrete plan. I had some savings, but not enough for a comfortable cushion. I would need to find an apartment quickly in a tough rental market. But for the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself and demanded respect. Whatever came next, I knew I had crossed a threshold I could never uncross. The first few weeks after leaving home were some of the hardest of my life. Jake was incredibly supportive, letting me crash on his couch without complaint, but his one-bedroom apartment was cramped for two adults. I threw myself into apartment hunting during any free time between my two jobs, scouring listings, making calls, and visiting properties. The financial strain was immediate. I had been saving for eventually buying my own place, but now those savings would have to go toward first and last months, rent, security deposit, and furnishing a new apartment. I picked up extra shifts at the electronics store, working myself to exhaustion 6 days a week. 3 days after I left, the text messages started. The first was from Mom. "Please come home, we can work this out." I did not respond. The next day, Dad, "This childish behavior needs to stop. You have responsibilities here." Again, I did not engage. A week in, the tone changed. "Mom, the water heater broke. Your father says it will cost $2,000 to replace. Can you help?" That one almost made me laugh. For years, I had been the family fix-it person handling repairs to save money. Now they were facing the real cost of home maintenance without my free labor. 10 days after I left, Derek texted, "Dude, it is weird here without you. Mom keeps crying." I finally responded to that one. "I am sorry she is upset, but things needed to change." 2 weeks in, I found a small one-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from work. It was more than I wanted to spend, but the rental market was tight, and I needed to get settled. The place was nothing special, just basic beige walls and worn carpet, but it was mine. I signed the lease immediately and moved in with the few possessions I had taken from home. My new budget was tight. Between rent, utilities, student loans, and basic necessities, I had very little left over each month. I bought secondhand furniture, a bed, a small table with 2 chairs, and a used couch. The apartment felt empty compared to my childhood home, but there was a sense of pride in knowing everything in it was mine, earned through my own work. 3 weeks after I left, the family messages took on a new tone. "Dad, your mother is having a hard time managing the household expenses. We could use some help with the utilities." I stared at my phone for a long time before responding. "I am no longer living there, so I am no longer responsible for household expenses." His response came quickly. "We are family. Families help each other." I waited a full day before replying, "Yes, they do, equally and fairly." The next weekend, I ran into an old high school friend who mentioned seeing Derek working at a local grocery store. I was genuinely surprised, having assumed he was still unemployed and playing video games all day. Part of me was proud of him for finally taking some responsibility, even if it had taken my departure to make it happen. A month after leaving, I was settling into my new routine. Work, apartment, sleep, repeat. It was lonely at times, but also peaceful. No more walking on eggshells, no more swallowing my resentment, no more cleaning up other people's messes. I joined a local gym to burn off stress and started making friends with my coworkers, gradually building a support system. 6 weeks after I left, I got an unexpected text from Derek. "Can we meet for coffee?" Just us. I was hesitant, but agreed. We met at a cafe halfway between our places. Derek looked different somehow, less cocky, more subdued. "So you got a job?" I said after we had ordered. He nodded. "Yeah, stocking shelves at Food Mart. It is not great, but it is something." What prompted that? Derek stared into his coffee. "Things changed after you left. Dad started demanding I contribute. Said if I wanted to live at home, I needed to pay rent, do chores, the whole deal." I tried to hide my surprise. "How is that going?" "It sucks," he admitted with a small laugh. "But I guess it is fair. I never realized how much you were doing until you were gone." There was an awkward silence before he continued. "They fight a lot now, about money mostly. Dad had to dip into his retirement to fix the water heater and the air conditioning unit, and Mom is stressed all the time about bills. That is not my responsibility anymore," I said, perhaps more coldly than I intended. "I know," Derek said quickly. "I am not saying it is. I guess I never realized how much you were holding everything together." We talked for another hour, and for the first time in years, it felt like a real conversation between brothers, rather than a competition. He asked about my new apartment, my job, my life. He seemed genuinely interested, which was new. As we were saying goodbye, Derek hesitated, then said, "They miss you, you know. They talk about you all the time." "I miss aspects of home too," I admitted, "but I do not miss being taken for granted." "I get that now," he said softly. "For what it is worth, I am sorry for my part in it." It was the first genuine apology I had ever received from my brother, and it meant more than I could express. 3 months after I left home, I got a text from Mom asking if we could meet for lunch. I agreed, choosing a restaurant near my office. She looked older somehow, more tired than I remembered, but she smiled when she saw me. "Your apartment is nice," she said after we had ordered. "Your father and I drove by last week. You could have come in if you had called first," I said. She nodded. "We were not sure we would be welcome." "That would depend on the purpose of the visit," I replied carefully. Mom took a deep breath. "We owe you an apology, Nathaniel. A big one. We did not treat you fairly, and we took advantage of your responsibility and work ethic." I was genuinely stunned. This was the last thing I had expected. "Your father has a harder time saying it," she continued, "but he knows it too. Losing your financial contribution hit us hard, but losing you as our son has been much worse." "I never stopped being your son," I said. "I just stopped accepting unfair treatment." "I know, and you were right to do it. We should have seen it sooner." She wiped away a tear. "Derek has changed too. Did you know he is working now?" I nodded. "We had coffee a few weeks ago. He is paying rent, doing chores without being asked. It is like he finally grew up overnight." "Sometimes people rise to the expectations set for them," I said. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. "We would like you to come to dinner next Sunday. Just a family meal. No pressure, no expectations." I hesitated. "I am not moving back." "We know that," she said quickly. "Your father and I have been talking, and we realize now how wrong we were. We just want a chance to rebuild our relationship with you on new terms." I agreed to dinner, curious but cautious. When Sunday came, I drove to my childhood home with mixed emotions. The house looked the same from the outside, but something felt different as I walked up the familiar path. Dad opened the door before I could knock. We stood there awkwardly for a moment before he extended his hand. "Thank you for coming." It was not an apology, but his eyes conveyed a humility I had never seen before. I shook his hand and stepped inside. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Derek had cooked, which was a first, and did not do a half-bad job with the lasagna. The conversation was somewhat stilted at first, but gradually warmed. We talked about work, current events, normal family things. There were no demands, no criticism, no unspoken expectations. After dinner, Dad asked if he could speak with me privately. We went out to the back porch, the same place where he had given me lectures throughout my childhood. "I was wrong," he said without preamble. "The way I treated you compared to your brother was wrong. I have no excuse for it." I stood there speechless. In 26 years, I had never heard my father admit he was wrong about anything. "I always thought I was preparing you for the real world," he continued, "pushing you to be responsible, hardworking. But somewhere along the line, I started taking advantage of those qualities instead of appreciating them." "Why, Derek?" I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why was he always the favorite? Dad sighed deeply. He reminded me of myself at that age, struggling in school, good at sports, charismatic. I saw myself in him, and I wanted to give him the support I never had. He paused. "But in doing so, I failed to see that you needed support too, just in different ways." It was not a perfect answer, but it was an honest one. And honesty was all I had ever really wanted from my family. Over the following months, we rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. I visited for dinner every couple of weeks. Mom and I had lunch regularly. Derek and I developed a friendship that had never existed during our childhood. Dad and I found common ground in discussions about investments and career planning. They never asked me to move back, and I would not have agreed if they had. My small apartment had become my sanctuary, a symbol of my independence and self-respect. But the family home no longer felt like a place of inequality and resentment. It just felt like the place where my family lived, people I could now choose to spend time with on my own terms. Looking back now, a year after that fateful morning when I walked out, I realized that sometimes the hardest decisions are the most necessary ones. Standing up for yourself does not mean destroying relationships. It means transforming them into something healthier. My relationship with my parents and brother today is stronger than I ever thought possible, built on mutual respect, rather than expectation and obligation. The journey was painful. There were nights in my empty apartment when I questioned everything, when loneliness and financial stress made me wonder if I had made a terrible mistake. But with each passing month, I grew more confident in my decision and in myself. I learned that I was not just the responsible son, the reliable worker, the constant provider. I was a person deserving of respect and fair treatment. My brother learned valuable lessons too. Having responsibility thrust upon him forced him to develop skills he had never needed before. We talk now about his plans for going back to school, this time with a clear purpose and work ethic he previously lacked. The irony is not lost on me, that by refusing to continue enabling him, I may have given him a greater gift than our parents ever did with their preferential treatment. My parents faced their own reckonings. Financial struggles forced them to confront their budget, their priorities, and ultimately their parenting mistakes. It was not easy for them to admit they had favored one son over another, but that admission opened the door to healing that would otherwise have been impossible. I do not share this story out of vindication or to encourage family division. I share it because I know many of you watching have felt the sting of unfair treatment, have swallowed your hurt to keep the peace, have worked twice as hard for half the recognition. I want you to know that standing up for yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. Sometimes those who take you for granted need to experience your absence to appreciate your presence. Have you ever had to make a difficult stand with family members who treated you unfairly? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. I would love to hear your stories. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences that might help you navigate your own family challenges. Remember, sometimes love means setting boundaries, and sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself and others is the courage to say no more. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found some value in my journey.